It's hard to find a gaming group to replay a full version of a game at a moment's notice, but fortunately I found help in rounding up an impromptu table with just a phone call. You would be surprised what the Pinkertons will do for just $20 a head. I swiped the credit card, and in a few hours I had 6 players dropped at my house and stuck in chairs with pre-gen characters waiting for them. The detectives didn't even charge me for the black bags. I gave my new friends their characters, shared some dice, untied them, explained the game, and offered them some leftovers tapas and stroopwafel. Then I introduced myself properly. I'm AJ Pickett, and let's play Shadowdark. Rewind a bit. Do you ever feel like you were denied critical need-to-know information? This is a redo of Shadowdark, as the copy I was sent originally was out of date and incomplete. I was sent a full version of the book for review by the author, and I would be remiss if I did not review the game in its entirety. Damn my journalistic integrity. A long time ago, the version 28 of the Mystara Player's Handbook was put up on the internet and remained the version that most people knew about, despite the book finally reaching version 114 on release. It wasn't fair to judge the handbook at its incomplete stage, despite it being superior to all other D&D setting books even back then. I will not let my incomplete review of Shadowdark stand. I'm secretly Mr. Welch, and consider this another sick symptom of my morbid obsession with absolute flawlessness. I've deleted the original video, as I'm starting over from here. Shadowdark is a 2023 release from the Arcane Library, written by Kelsey Dion. Lucas Corte did the cover art and a good chunk of the interior art. Other artists include Brandish Gillum, Jesse Egan, Yuri Perkowski-Domingos, Mats Morrow and Ray, Mark Lyons, and Abdul Latif. The book clocks in at 328 pages and is in black and white. Because if it wasn't, you couldn't call it Shadowdark now, could you? The game is a D20 system that merges parts of 5th edition and the earlier BX D&D and elements from several other games. You got the standard 6 D&D stats, and the stat progression follows that of 3rd edition with a +1 bonus for every 2 points in your stat. The core book has only 4 starting classes, your standard fighter, wizard, cleric, and thief. They have 6 races in the core book, called ancestries here. These are the completely trustworthy and not suspicious at all humans, chronically alcoholic dwarves, twig-like elves, absolutely up to no good halflings, macho half-orcs, and the goblins who can't be surprised because their own mother would shank them for a copper piece. Any race can be any class, exactly like 3rd edition. Classes go up to 10th level, so there's no high-level play like in similar previous games. It's meant to be quick and straight-up dungeon crawls. Doesn't pretend to be anything else. Class and racial abilities are much more toned down than in other D&D style games. The races get an additional language and a single racial ability. Humans get, say it with me, an extra skill. Dwarves get bonus hit points. Elves are better at hitting things with magic and ranged weapons. Half-orcs get bonuses to hit and melee. Halflings can turn invisible, and goblins can't be surprised, as mentioned. Classes get starting abilities, with certain ones like weapon mastery leveling up with the character for fighters. Each class starts with a random rolled benefit, where you look at a chart for each class, giving you a bonus. This mechanic is almost identical to the Dragon Age RPG with their racial charts. Every other level gives you another roll on the chart. Everything so far is similar to people who have enjoyed various fantasy RPGs. There is alignment in the game, but only along the lawful chaos axis. Somewhere out there, Elric is smiling. Well, not smiling, more like smirking out of both sides of his mouth at once. Smiling isn't an Elric kind of thing. Class titles are back, and they get more awesome as you level up and are specialized by the character's alignment. It has no real mechanical benefits, but bonus points for keeping it old school. You have languages broken up into common ones that the various monsters speak, and rarer ones that are only spoken by a few creatures and hardly ever used in play, like Celestial, Primordial, or Danish. Finally, you roll for your background, which gives you a set of pseudo-skills that give you advantage when a task falls within their range. Combat falls more into the 5th edition style, with armor class ascending, and weapon properties like finesse and versatility being a thing. However, those properties are much rarer than the 5th edition weapons chart. Weapons don't have damage types, they all do missile or melee damage, more in line with BX. It's not like 5th edition did anything with weapon damages anyways. What was the point of telling us that the weapons did slashing, bludgeoning, or piercing when there were only like 5 monsters where that even mattered? You could have used all that wasted space and put banded mail back in the game. Speaking of banded mail, armor in Shadowdark is far more limited than other games. There's just leather, chain, and plate. No studded leather, splint, ring, brigantine, lamellar, padded cloth, breastplate, and definitely no lorica segmentata. I don't know what it is with games today and their prejudice against banded mail. It was the perfect armor. Not expensive and restricted to snobby rich people like plate mail. It was better quality and protection than just regular old chain mail. That was the fantasy armor equivalent of buying off the rack at Ross's. You never forget your first set of banded mail when you're walking around Castle Amber, and there it is in the chest just past the Insane Cleric. Banded mail +2. It's far better than the chain +1 you're wearing, dropping your armor class a solid -2 and letting you tank with the big boys. But nope, Shadowdark is just like all the other games, conspiring to keep banded mail away from the next generation of gamers. Armor class is almost exactly like 5th edition, with the heavier armors restricting maximum dexterity bonuses. The bonus to hit doesn't automatically go up. You must roll that result on the chart when you level up. There's a chance that a fighter never gets another bonus from his class chart if the dice don't come up with the right numbers. Granted, that's a small chance, and a good sign that the dice gods are displeased with your character. But it's still possible. The advancement charts are slanted so your basic abilities are more likely to go up, but dice can be fickle. Roll badly and you've got a fighter with a +6 armor class bonus for wearing plate mail, and not one single additional bonus to hit anything. Yeah, you gotta roll a 9 or a 10 every time, but I've seen stranger. Ask Dave about the time he rolled 12 ones on 12 dice. There are witnesses, and at least one photograph. Encumbrance uses item slots, similar to the system that the Alien RPG uses, or going back even further, the game Car Wars, the war game that slowly morphed into an RPG. You only have a limited number of equipment slots, equal to 10 or your strength ability, whichever is higher. Fighters get a further bonus because they are the pack mules of Shadowdark. You can't store gear in containers, there's no bags or pouches that you can buy for extra carrying capacity. You can wear backpacks for free, but keeping items in there doesn't increase your carrying capacity. Might as well wear the items hanging off your belt. I'm sure that's a balance issue, but we invented pockets for that very reason. Containers should be able to contain things. It's the old weight versus volume argument. You can carry 100 pounds of lead much easier than you can carry 100 pounds of styrofoam. Shadowdark has sided with the volume camp of the encumbrance debate. Most items take up a single slot. Larger weapons and heavier armor, of course, take up more. Coins also take up space. You're not dragging tens of thousands of coins back in the good old days. Be sure to leave a few prisoners behind to serve as strong backs if you hit the mother load, because you can't bring along hirelings or pack mules. The game does make a big deal about torches burning in real time, but it still feels like a gimmick to me. I know it's there to push the players along, but it felt like an added mechanic that DM Fiat could have waived. Let the dungeon masters keep track of the torches, and when the players are dawdling or during a dramatic moment, the torch goes out. Do you light another one, cast a spell, or light the dwarf? It's a resource eater, but one I don't know is needed. Magic is similar to Dungeon Crawl Classics in that you need to roll to hit with your spells. It's a bit more forgiving, so you're not mutating all over the place on a critical failure. Instead, you botch your check, and one of two things happen. Clerics lose their access to that spell unless they do the Jim Baker special and donate money to get their lost spell back. Wizards get to roll on the chart of bad stuff. This roll is modified by the level of the spell. It can be anything from taking a bit of damage at the lowest level to destroying the world by creating an ever-expanding hole in the fabric of reality. Great job breaking it, hero. One difference in spellcasting that Shadowdark does have is spells are use it until you fail. So if you have 3 spells, you can keep casting the same one over and over again. As long as you have available spell slots at that level, you can keep casting the same spell over and over again, until you fail to cast it, in which case you have to rely on other spells, and you don't get it back until you take a long rest. And again, like Dungeon Crawl Classics, magic items are meant to be unique if they're not disposable. Items frequently have a bonus and a downside, like a sword getting a massive damage bonus, but only against children. A good chunk of the game is meant to be rolled at random. There's rarely a sword +1 in the game with no additional benefits. There's a chance you get a fantastic extra ability and no bonus to hit or damage at all. An ordinary run-of-the-mill club might have no observable magical benefits, until you roll a critical hit against the Thule, and then his head comes clean off, if this game had Thules. You could add them to Shadowdark with no problem. They're a Mystaran monster, after all, and if Wizards tried to complain, they'd first have to admit Mystara exists, and that they actually care about it. That's not going to happen. The game is clearly meant to be modular. Many optional rules are presented, and there's even multiple options for the different rules. Unlike other games where you only have the options of X or Y, the rules can go from easy mode, standard, or TPK in a can. Dying can be on a timer, require a higher difficulty to save a player, or you kick the bucket old school at 0 hit points. They do need an alternate rule for morale, as it doesn't consider any factor except body count. There's no bonus, for example, if the monsters are winning, or maybe they have a leader that they're more afraid of than the characters. It's just an unmodified target number of 15 with no modifiers once the monsters are at half strength is too simplistic. It should depend on the situation. But the multiple optional rules are good for teaching new players the ropes and ramping up the difficulty as they learn the game. Shadowdark does have a large number of monsters, primarily old school staples with some renamed trademark friendly bad guys. You can face kobolds back in their dog forms like nature intended. There's a few legendary monsters for more challenging play. Behold, the Ten-Eyed Oracle. Okay, I thought that was a Decapus when I first saw the art. That should be totally added to the game anyways. It's not like Wizards will complain, because again, they must admit first that they value Mystara. The Tarrasque is there, but it's back to being the French dragon of lore rather than Faerun's answer to Godzilla. It's still going to eat the party. This game only goes up to level 10. The game is still missing several components from the old BX line. All jokes about banded mail aside, there are no gnomes. And people have told me they've been added, but aside from the Deep Gnome as a monster, there aren't any playable races in any of the materials that I was provided. The weapon list is pared down quite a bit. Don't look for any polearm. There are a few mechanically identical weapons like the Bastard Sword and the Great Axe or the Mace and the Short Sword. It's a minor gripe, but why take a short sword for 7 gold pieces when the mace is only 5 gold pieces and has the same stat line? Mechanically identical weapons have always been a pet peeve of mine. That's the full Shadowdark, as provided to me by the author. It was given to me without any expectations. In fact, we actually cut short our conversation as to avoid bias. Has my view on it changed? Yes, and for the better. I still like my games with a bit more meat on their bones, but it fills the role nicely for a starter game or quick play. It does what other games have done before, but it tends to leave out its predecessor's glaring flaws. The art's not bad. It's old school style like Errol Otis or Jeff Dees. I couldn't find any typos or glaring formatting issues either. You're not going to get the epic quest other titles might provide, but if you want to put sharp, pointy things in bad guys, I've seen far worse options. We now return you to our regularly scheduled gaming.